It was an Orioles loss on Tuesday night, and Tyler Wells, the Orioles starting pitcher, took the loss after giving up another home run in the sixth inning. But I'm here to tell you why, despite the fact that Wells has allowed 19 home runs this year, the long ball really doesn't have to be an issue for him, and really isn't, I don't think, at this point. I'll tell you why coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Wednesday, June 28th, 2023, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap a tough Orioles loss as they fall 3-1 to the Cincinnati Reds on Tuesday night. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from that one, including Jordan Westburg, another big game in his second at the big league level, a very weird 7th inning before another rain delay, and the Orioles offense just not really showing up in this one. Then we'll talk about Tyler Wells, who had another good start on Tuesday night, but did get hurt by the home run ball once again. He's given up a lot of them this year, but I'm here to tell you why that is not really an issue for the guy who has become the Orioles' most consistent starter. Then finally talk about an Orioles minor league signing to finish out the podcast. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So we start today's episode with an Orioles loss. Final score from Oriole Park at Camden Yards on Tuesday night is the Cincinnati Reds 3 and the Baltimore Orioles 1, evening up this 3-game series at 1 game apiece and setting up a rubber match for Wednesday night at Oriole Park. With the loss, the Orioles snapped their quick little 3-game winning streak and dropped to 48 and 30 on the season, and the Reds snap their 3-game losing streak. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles 3-1 loss to the Reds. The first thing you need to know is Tyler Wells was great again for the Orioles. Turns in another quality start for the O's on Tuesday. 6 innings of work for Tyler Wells. He allows just 2 runs on 4 hits, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk, and 1 home run allowed on 99 pitches. Only 4 hard hit balls against Wells, and he lowers his ERA to 3.21 on the season. This is basically what you can expect from Tyler Wells pretty much every time he goes out there, right? 6 innings, 2 runs. He got 11 whiffs on the day, and the pitch that was thriving was the changeup for Tyler Wells. 7 whiffs on 15 swings. A lot of lefties in that Reds lineup. Wells went to that changeup again and again against the lefties, diving it out of the zone, starting at the knees and breaking down. We're also threw it against the righties as well and was successful both ways. A good 4-seam fastball. Once again, the cutter, as it usually is, was kind of the get me over pitch for Wells. Didn't throw a lot of breaking balls, but the stuff just looked really good again for Tyler Wells. And we'll get to him a little bit more a little bit later. Second thing you need to know from this one is that Jordan Westburg's second game with the Baltimore Orioles in the big leagues was even better than his first. Westburg once again got the start at second base, hitting 7th, and he had a great day, reaching base 3 times. Westburg 2 for 3 with a couple of singles and a walk. He also had 3 hard hit balls on the day. His only out was a 1-out line out in the 9th inning. Thought for sure it was going to be a hit off the bat to right field, hit it 99 miles an hour. It had an expected batting average of 770, but it ended up in the right fielder's glove for out number 2 of the 9th inning. But all of Westburg's plate appearances were really impressive. 2nd inning single, 99 off the bat. 4th inning single, 96 off the bat. 7th inning walk, 9th inning line out, 99 off the bat. I just loved his approach every single time. Made a really nice diving play at second base as well. Moved over to third base later in the game when the O's made some changes. Made a nice play over there. Just very impressive first 2 games from Jordan Westburg. Third thing you need to know from this one, speaking of Jordan Westburg, he did walk, as I mentioned, in this game in the 7th inning. That was a part of a just very weird 7th inning that was one of the weirdest innings of the year for the Orioles at the plate. They were trailing 2-1 and came out there in the 7th inning. Lucas Sims had come out of the bullpen for the Reds after a great start from Andrew Abbott. And Cedric Mullins takes a 2-2 slider that probably should have been a strike, but it was called ball 3. Dan Mertzel had a horrendous night behind the plate. I mean, he was absolutely terrible. I'll get to that in this inning. And then Mullins walks. So Mullins goes to first to lead off the inning. Sims throws over back-to-back times to first base before throwing a pitch. So he's already used 2 of his disengagements, which means if he throws over again and doesn't get the out, it's a balk and Mullins goes to second. So Mullins gets a running lead on the first pitch, but thinking the Reds would pitch out, knowing he's trying to steal, he bluffs the go and Westburg swings and misses at a slider. At that point, Mullins thinks, all right, they're not going to pitch out. He gets the running lead again and goes, well, this time they do pitch out. Luke Maile makes a nice throw to second, and they throw him out. So just unlucky by the O's, good execution by the Reds. Well, then, the next batter of the inning, the Orioles get another base runner in that 7th inning. And so you're trying to figure out, like, what is going on here? Can you start to rally here and get yourself on the board? Jordan Westburg draws that walk, and then it goes 3-0 to Ryan O'Hearn, who you think is about to draw another walk, but he has the green light, as he should. He's been mashing the baseball lately, but he takes a weird half swing and kind of hits a slow grounder to short, gets thrown out. Westburg goes to second. Then Adam Frazier falls behind and then is hit with a pitch that bounced in and hit him to put 2 on and 2 out. So then you have Austin Hayes up, best batting average in the American League. You're down 2-1. You got runners on first and second. And you think we got a chance to tie this game in the 7th inning. And Hayes takes an 0-1 fastball from Lucas Sims that almost hits him in the hands. He has to move his hands out of the way to get out of the way of the fastball. And somehow Dan Mertzel calls it a strike for an 0-2 count. I couldn't believe it. It's on my Twitter page at Connor Newcomb _, the video of the pitch. I mean, it was the worst call from a home plate umpire I've seen this year in an Orioles game. It was egregious. From 1-1, it goes to 0-2. Hayes fights back to 2-2, but strikes out to end the inning. Just a wild and wacky inning for the O's. They had a chance to score, couldn't make it happen. It did end up being kind of their best chance to get back in the game, and just wasn't meant to be, apparently, in that 7th inning. Fourth thing you need to know from this one is that just kind of in general, the Orioles offense mostly did not show up in this game. They got a couple of runners on in the second. Ryan McKenna delivered a sac fly to give the Orioles a 1-0 lead. That was it for the Orioles offense in this game. They really didn't threaten at all again until the weird 7th. Now they did get a 2-out double from Gunnar Henderson in the 8th, and Aaron Hicks did hit a ball pretty hard after that, 95 off the bat, but just got under it a bit. Only hit it 350 feet for a fly out to end the inning. But I will give the Orioles credit. You know, it wasn't a good night for the O's. They had only 3 hits. Jordan Westburg had 2 of their 3 hits. The other one was a Gunnar Henderson 2-out double in the 8th that he smoked off the bat at 108. But I got to say, they did show fight, as they always do. Got 2 on in the 7th, got 1 on in the 8th. And after the first 2 batters in the 9th, Cedric Mullins and Jordan Westburg were retired, the Orioles fought back. Ryan O'Hearn was hit by a pitch, then went to second on defensive indifference, thought it was a foul ball, tried to go back to first. Reds had him picked off to end the game and then threw the ball into center field. That was a wild sequence. Adam Frazier works a 3-2 walk. And Austin Hayes came up to the plate representing the winning run, and he crushed a ball. He hit a ball hard to center field. Unfortunately, it was right at the center fielder, 98 off the bat. Thought it had a chance to land in the gap, but instead ended the game. But got to give credit to the O's. The offense was not there all day. And a lot of that had to do with Andrew Abbott on the other side. Like, Andrew Abbott now has a 1.21 ERA, allowed 1 run on 2 hits over 6 innings with 8 Ks and 3 walks. The lefty was just ridiculous against the O's in this one. But the O's were bad until they weren't and showed a little fight. And they seem to show a little fight in pretty much every game that they play, even when they do lose like they did on Tuesday. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 3-1 loss to the Reds on Tuesday night is that, you know, Keegan Aiken had a nice bounce back outing for the Orioles. Brian Baker also pitched, did give up a solo home run in the 8th after another rain delay. This one, an hour, 45 minutes. And Cionel Perez had another scoreless outing with a scoreless top of the 9th. But Keegan Aiken was the best pitcher out of the bullpen. 1-2-3, top of the 7th with a couple of strikeouts for Keegan Aiken, who kind of looked unhittable in that outing. Like, that was one of his best outings of the season. And it's interesting that it happened when it did, because the last time he pitched was probably Aiken's worst outing in an Orioles uniform. 2/3 of an inning, 7 runs allowed late in that 13-1 loss to the Mariners on Friday night. And to see him bounce back was really nice. Listen, he's still got a 6.26 ERA on the year. He still hasn't been great, but he's a part of this bullpen, and the O's are going to have to go to him at times. And it was nice to see him have a good inning in the 7th on Tuesday. But the Orioles did lose the game 3-1, evening the series up at 1 game apiece. And even though Tyler Wells did take the loss in this one, certainly wasn't his fault. I mean, he pitched very well once again. But the home run ball did haunt him again in this start. And he's given up the second most homers in the majors. But coming up next, I'll take a look at the Tyler Wells homers and try to answer the question, are those home runs really a huge problem for the Orioles right-hander? But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Now, buying tickets to your favorite events, including Orioles games, should not be stressful. And they are not stressful to me either, because I used to be stressed about buying tickets last minute, but that's not the case anymore with Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the events you want to go to, including Orioles games. They've got killer deals on last-minute tickets, and they got a best price guarantee. So you can stop stressing over the tickets, start getting hyped for all the fun you'll have. I'm going to the Orioles game tonight, Wednesday night game, Pride night at the ballpark. Going to be a great time, Orioles Reds. And I haven't bought my tickets yet as I record here late on Tuesday night, because I'm probably going to get them through the Game Time app right before the game for a great price. I'm going to look for those flash deals that they have. It's easy to get the tickets. I could buy those tickets at $6.45. They'd be sent directly to my phone through the Game Time app, show them at the gate, and I walk right in to see the Orioles play. Game Time is just great like that. They give you images of your seats before you buy, so you know exactly where you're going to sit. And again, sent directly to your phone. Don't have to dig through your email to find the tickets. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and then we got a promo code for you as well to use. That is promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the Orioles fall to the Cincinnati Reds 3-1 on Tuesday night, evening up this series at 1 game apiece. But Tyler Wells was good once again. Talked about him a bit already, but 6 strong innings for Tyler Wells, 2 runs, 4 hits, 7 Ks, a walk. And of course, as he usually does, 1 home run allowed. And that home run, it was the difference in the game. A solo shot to lead off the 6th inning by the rookie Matt McLain, hit it 100 miles per hour off the bat, 402 feet to right center field. That gave the Reds a 2-1 lead in the 6th, and that would be the difference in a 3-1 ball game. Now, Wells has given up a lot of homers this year, okay? That was his 19th home run allowed in 16 appearances. Technically, it's 15 starts, and then those 5 hitless innings in relief he threw in Texas to start his season after Kyle Bradish got injured. But basically, 16 starts, 19 homers. So he's allowing more than 1 long ball per start. For a lot of pitchers, that would be an issue. Let's take a look at some of the guys right there with Wells at the top of the leaderboard, because he is tied for second in baseball right now in home runs allowed with 19. Number 1 is Yusei Kikuchi, who's still done a good job of limiting runs, still a 3.75 ERA, but the homer has gotten to him at times, as it has over the past few years. Also at 19 homers is Lance Lynn, not having a good year, worst of his career, 6.40 ERA. And the other guy at 19 is our old friend Jordan Lyles, who has statistically been the worst regular starting pitcher in Major League Baseball this season with a 6.88 ERA. He led the majors in home runs in 2021. He's on track to do it again in 2023. But just because some of those guys have struggled with the long ball doesn't mean Tyler Wells has to, right? Like, Wells has given up 19 homers, second most in baseball. Yet he has a 3.21 ERA, one of the best in the league, best on the Orioles starting rotation for a team that's 48-30 and trending towards the playoffs. Now, for Tyler Wells, you're thinking, well, how does he have that many homers allowed and that low of an ERA? Well, first thing is, he doesn't allow a lot of base runners. This is why it's not becoming a huge problem. Wells, after the start on Tuesday, a 0.88 whip on the season. That's walks and hits divided by innings pitched. He's giving up less than one base runner per inning, which is pretty elite. That is the lowest whip among all qualified starting pitchers in baseball. So when you're limiting runners, you got a low whip. His 1.85 walks per nine is the 11th lowest of any starting pitcher in baseball. When you've got those numbers, the home runs don't really hurt you. Yes, it's 19 home runs, but the McLean shot was a solo shot on Tuesday. And 13 of the 19 homers have been solo home runs. Here's kind of a news flash for baseball, really over the last 10 years, but specifically over the last 5. Home runs are going to be hit. I mean, maybe not at the juiced ball levels of 2019, but the ball does seem a little juiced right now. So home runs are going to be allowed, and they're going to be hit. The name of the game at this point is, can you limit the damage when you inevitably, as a starting pitcher, give up those home runs? And that's what Wells has done. 13 solo shots and 6 2-run shots against him this year. Do the math. That is 0 3-run homers and 0 grand slams. So when he gives up the long ball, it's not hurting him too bad. And it's not like, he's due to give up more homers or he's getting lucky or something like that. He's right about middle of the pack in hard hit percentage and average exit velocity against him this year. So it's not like he's getting hit crazy hard, and more homers and then more hits that lead to bigger homers are coming. That's just not really the case right now for Tyler Wells. But the other thing to know is guys over the last few years have still had a lot of success when they give up a lot of home runs. The harder you're throwing, the more you're hunting the strikeouts. Sometimes you'll hang more pitches and sometimes you'll give up more homers. But if you're not walking a lot of guys, you're not allowing a lot of base runners, those solo home runs really don't hurt you that much. Garrett Cole was the major league leader in home runs allowed last season with 33 homers. He had a 3.50 ERA. Garrett Cole was also second in homers allowed in the shortened 2020 season. He had a sub-3 ERA. Other guys last year who were in the top 20 in homers allowed: Tristan McKenzie, sub-3 ERA. Julio Urias was second in the Cy Young in the National League last year. Corbin Burns, Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish all had great seasons in 2022. All gave up 20-plus homers and were in the top 20 in baseball in that number. It can be done if you're not allowing a lot of other base runners. Look at Robbie Ray. In 2021, he won the American League Cy Young Award. He also gave up 33 home runs that year. That was the third most in baseball. Justin Verlander in 2019 gave up 36 home runs, also the third most in baseball. He also had a 2.58 ERA and won the American League Cy Young Award in 2019. I'm not saying Tyler Wells is going to win the Cy Young. He's not going to. But a lot of people have been really concerned about the homers that he's allowing. And I get it, right? Second most in the big leagues is second most in the big leagues. A home run's an automatic run. At best, you give up a homer, the other team is still getting one run. But that's kind of the point here. Wells isn't giving up a lot of hits. He's not walking anybody. And yes, a higher percentage of his hits than basically anybody else are home runs. Now he plays in a ballpark that still helps him. And it's more of a pitcher-friendly park, especially when he's facing righties. But he's still getting hurt by the home run ball. But not in a big way. Solo homers don't really hurt you at this point in Major League Baseball. And as long as he keeps the walks down, keeps the hits down, keeps the hard hit balls down, he's going to continue to give up homers. He is a fly ball pitcher. It's going to happen. But I think he can have success, not just through the rest of this year, but through his career like this, because other guys have done it. And I get that Tyler Wells isn't peak Robbie Ray. He's not Julio Urias. He's not Garrett Cole. He's not Justin Verlander. I get all that. But he's still a successful pitcher, and he can be successful, even when giving up homers. I don't think it's a big deal. He's going to give them up, and those will be his runs. If you give up 2 runs over 6 innings, does it matter if it's 3 walks and a couple of singles or if it's 2 solo homers? What's really the difference at the end of the day, as long as you're limiting base runners? That's what Wells is doing. And I get if he could limit homers too, he might be a legitimate Cy Young candidate. I understand that. But there's a limit to Tyler Wells' potential. He is not a Cy Young type pitcher. So if this is the one drawback of his game, I'm fine with it. I think he can get to the end of the season being the O's most consistent pitcher, even when he's given up the long ball. We got one more thing to get to here on today's episode. Orioles making a minor league signing earlier in the week. Probably not a guy that'll impact them that much, but then again, they've used a lot of different backup catchers on the roster this year, with James McCann having some injury issues. So they signed one more and figured he might be in Baltimore at some point. So might as well get to know him a little bit, talk about that to finish off the pod coming up next. So the Baltimore Orioles fell to the Reds 3-1 on Tuesday night. Series even at 1 game apiece, but that means we find out the winner of that series coming up tonight at the ballpark. 7:05 p.m. Eastern time start here on Wednesday night. I will be there in the park. Come say hi if you would like to. I always like to talk Orioles baseball during the game, but it's Orioles and Reds for the final game of a 3-game series. Luke Weaver, the right-hander, will take the mound for Cincinnati. Been kind of an interesting year for Luke Weaver, 29-year-old righty. Reds eventually got him this season after he was jumping around on waivers the past couple of years. He was once a top prospect. He was a first-round pick of the Cardinals in 2014, 5+ ERA in his career. He's got a 6.86 ERA this season for the Reds. He's allowed 5 earned runs in each of his last 2 starts. It's time for the Orioles to jump on him and get a series win. And the O's will send Kyle Gibson out to the mound, coming off his worst start in an Orioles uniform when he got just 9 outs, 5 runs over 3 innings against Seattle on Friday. Gibson will look to bounce back here tonight. You can catch every pitch of the Orioles' hometown broadcast of tonight's Game 3 of this O's-Reds series with the SiriusXM app. That is the SXM app. Download it, go on the app, and just search Orioles. But the O's, a little bit of news and notes, just at least one thing to get to before we finish up the pod. They did sign another catcher to a minor league deal this week. And I get it. We are past the point. We're out of the rebuild. We're past the point where, I'm doing a full episode for every single minor league signing because I pretty much know that if the Orioles sign a guy to a minor league deal, there's a better than 50% chance he plays a significant amount for them at the major league level. We are past that point of this Orioles team now. But they have used a lot of catchers, right, at the backup spot this year. We've seen obviously James McCann, but he's been injured 2 different times. So we've seen Anthony Bemboom, who we're seeing now. We've seen even some guys who didn't really play much, like Jose Godoy was here for a bit. Luis Torrens was here for a bit. Neither got into a game. We saw Mark Colesbury briefly as well. So they're going through some different catchers because, sometimes they've carried 3 catchers at times. They want to have the versatility. And there's been some injuries, and with the shuffling, the DFAing, the moving of the roster, they needed more catchers at AAA. So they went out and signed Meibrys Viloria, a 26-year-old left-handed hitting catcher out of Colombia, and they signed him to a minor league deal. Now, most likely he's going to join AAA Norfolk in the next couple of days. But I wanted to bring him up just because he does have a solid amount of major league experience and actually more MLB experience than some of the other catchers the O's have brought in to kind of be that third catcher in the organization. Came up at age 21, did Viloria with the Kansas City Royals, actually debuted in September of 2018 against the Orioles and had 2 RBIs in that game. Was with Kansas City from 2018 to 2020, 200 plate appearances, hit .215, wasn't much of a hitter, more of a defensive guy. 26 games with the Rangers last year, had a .159 average. And then he played in 10 games with the Guardians this season, had just 4 plate appearances though, 0 for 3 with a walk, was more of a late defensive replacement behind the dish. Also spent some time in AAA with the Angels this year as well. Bounced around on waivers, was released, and then the Orioles picked him up on a minor league deal. He's played 103 games, 280 plate appearances, 198 hitter, 549 OPS, 3 homers in his big league career. Basically what he is AAA catching depth for the Orioles, but I just wanted to bring him up because they've used a lot of catchers on the roster. The Orioles may go with 3 catchers again at some point this year if they want to get Adley a little more rest, DH him a little bit more. So you never know. But just wanted to mention Meibrys Viloria because he could be an Oriole at some point this season. We also got a little bit of good news about John Means playing catch for the Orioles, which is very nice to see. They're still getting second opinions on second, third, fourth, fifth opinions on Michael Gibbons and Dylan Tate. James McCann is doing some baseball activities, so he could be back soon. All of this coming from Brandon Hyde earlier this week. And some injured minor leaguers kind of starting to get back to the mound. Kyle Brinovich is about to start a rehab assignment in the FCL, it looks like. BSL on the verge was on that first, but he'll be back pretty soon. Saw Zach Peak posting about him and Trey McGuff both being close to returning, at least to some throwing activities and to the mound from their Tommy John surgeries. Brinovich had Tommy John as well. So, hey, nice to see some guys get back on the hill at the minor league level. But that'll do it for today's episode. Orioles, they will go for the series win today. Again, a 7:05 p.m. Eastern time start. And then I'll be back with you on the pod tomorrow, recapping Game 3 between the Reds and the Orioles and getting you all the other O's news and notes that you may need. But that's all coming up on tomorrow's episode. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.